I'm Paulo Sandoval in Bogota, Colombia, and this is CNN.
The news continues. Let's hand it over to Sarah Seidner in CNN Tonight. Sarah?
Anderson Cooper, thank you so much. Happy to be here. I'm Sarah Seidner, and this is CNN Tonight. For the first time, the January 6th committee's public hearings move beyond Washington tomorrow. Until now, the committee has really been delving into the actions of those surrounding then-President Trump, what he knew and when he knew it. Now it's what did Trump himself do, and was it a criminal act? And you can be sure this moment will be part of the focus.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
That is just a really short clip of the 1 hour call between then President Trump and Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, 4 days before the Capitol insurrection. It is key to the question of how far Donald Trump went and how much of a role he personally played in the efforts to overturn the election results in Georgia and 6 other states. Raffensperger is set to testify before the committee tomorrow. So too is his deputy, Gabe Sterling, and a third Republican, Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers. He also resisted Donald Trump's efforts to ignore the will of the voters. We will also see what the committee is learning about whether Trump was involved in the scheme by his allies to submit phony slates of electors. Fake certificates were sent to the National Archives as part of the failed attempt to undo Joe Biden's victory.
We'll show during a hearing what the president's role was in trying to get states to name alternate slates of electors, how that scheme depended initially on hopes that the legislatures would reconvene and bless it.
Will we see that he directed it?
I don't want to get ahead of what we'll show you during the hearing, but we will show you what we know about his role in this.
Anna Bash always asking the pertinent question. The Justice Department will undoubtedly be watching tomorrow. Federal prosecutors are still reviewing those fake electoral college certifications nearly 6 months after CNN first learned they were investigating. We will also see the personal toll at the state level when former Georgia election worker Shea testifies. Trump and others falsely accused her of carrying out a fake ballot scheme herself in Fulton County. She got death threats as a result. Between the DOJ probe and the special grand jury now hearing evidence in Fulton County, tomorrow may help answer whether the 45th president could be held criminally responsible. Yet, even with more than 800 people prosecuted since January 6th, none of those charged to date carry the name Trump. I'm joined now by Olivia Nunzi, Ramesh Ponnaruru, and Ellie Honig. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, I'm happy to be here, but this is serious stuff. The country is watching in part, but the DOJ is definitely watching how this plays out. Can I just ask you, first of all, what do you expect to hear? I'm going to start with you, Ellie. How important is this legally to Donald Trump and to the committee?
Well, Sarah, so I think what we're going to hear tomorrow is different from what we've been hearing throughout these committee hearings thus far in 2 respects. First of all, the sheer audacity of what Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman were trying to do. They were contacting state and local officials and telling them, even though your state voted for Joe Biden, I want you to throw it to me, with zero factual basis, zero evidence to support the allegations of fraud, and contrary to the law and the Constitution. The other thing that's going to be different here is we're going to hear Donald Trump himself on the phone with Brad Raffensperger. We know that Trump called other state officials in other states, as opposed to the way he normally operates by having, whether it's Rudy or John Eastman or before that Michael Cohen, do his dirty work. This is going to be Trump directly in his own voice.
How will the hearing Trump himself sort of pressure, and I'm going to ask this to you, Ramesh, how will it pressure state lawmakers? And will it make them shift? Because there are some folks who very much believe that 2020 was, that the election was a faked election, which is untrue. Will hearing all this evidence sway any of these state lawmakers?
Well, I think that one thing that it's going to do is highlight the continuing threat of political violence, which has become an increasing part of our political landscape in a way that's really dangerous. And this was a key moment in that. The unleashing of this very potent lie about the election and the pressure that was made to act on the lie, and the pressure brought to bear against people who were resisting acting on the lie. I think we're going to hear a lot about that, and that's not just something with relevance to 2020, it's something with potential relevance to 2024. The other thing is when you hear Trump himself, it gives people who are listening a chance to evaluate this, one of these key questions in these hearings, which is, what was Trump's frame of mind? How much of this, and I think this has been actually a genuine question, how much of this was delusion on his part and how much of it was conscious lying? And when he says that snippet where he said, you know, I need you to come up with 11,780 votes, that one, it's hard to come up with an innocent explanation for. That one, I think, helps make the case, maybe not beyond a reasonable doubt, but helps make the case that he knew that he was lying and he knew he was involved in a corrupt enterprise.
The other thing about that phone call, though, and I hadn't heard it in a while, and I was reminded of it just now, is that his tone of voice, the tone that he strikes in a rally, say, or talking to partisan media, it can be a bit jokey, it can be a bit difficult to know where exactly the line is for him if he's making a mockery of the whole thing. He struck a very serious tone on that call for most of it. And I think maybe hearing that might, if the committee has any hope of persuading anybody, if there are persuadable viewers of these hearings, maybe that would be part of it. I also think that hearing from people who are, kind of government functionaries who are not like in Washington, who are not in glamorous jobs, who are just doing their duty, trying to do their part, do their jobs. If there is hope for the committee that there are people who are persuadable, who are not set in their defense of the former president, I think maybe that will be where they find it.
We're talking about this from the federal level, but there is a state case going on in Georgia right now as we speak. A grand jury is looking at some of this evidence as well. How might this play? Because it's going to be spilled out into the public sphere now.
Yeah, there's parallel proceedings here. We know that as the committee's having its hearings, the Fulton County, which is the Atlanta area district attorney, Fani Willis, has a grand jury going. And Brad Raffensperger, who we'll hear tomorrow, has testified. And Gabriel Sterling, the second witness, has testified. And that call that Olivia talked about is so key. I mean, I listened to it. We've all heard that snippet. I need you to find. It's 62 minutes long. And Olivia's right. When you listen to it, it is alarming. Donald Trump is browbeating Brad Raffensperger. He is attacking him personally. He threatens him. He says at one point, I'm telling you there's fraud. And if you don't do anything about it, you might be committing a crime. It is serious. It's frightening. And it reminds us that the people who stood up to Donald Trump, Brad Raffensperger and Sterling and many, many others, again, like Olivia said, these are state and local officials. They're not big-time fancy D.C. politicians, and they're Republicans. And they said absolutely not. Yeah.
And Raffensperger survived politically. And I think that is also an important thing about the political context of these hearings, that, they tried very hard, Trump and his most diehard supporters, to take him out at the next election. He was thought to be, just a dead man walking, and he won convincingly. And so there's a message also being sent to Republicans. This is a possible path.
And it's one of the political goals, or the most obvious political goals of these hearings, is for Republicans, establishment Republicans, to kind of rid the party of Donald Trump. I think the more Republicans, like you just described, who are heard from, it's probably going to help them make their case better than hearing from Democratic lawmakers or people for whom those testimonies wouldn't have any effect.
They already think they're biased. Olivia Nuzzi, you said something that I think is important. You said, well, of the people who are watching. You did. You did. Of the people who are watching this, because I want to show you the polling. The polling says public opinion has not really shifted much, even after the hearing started. And you can see, like, now 58% should Donald Trump be charged for his role on January 6th. April 52, 54. So we're all in sort of the margin of error, right? And then, we also are going to look in a minute about, whether or not people are actually watching this. And a lot of people aren't watching every detail as it comes out. But you are seeing, the numbers sort of lift a little bit. What are you hearing? Because you've gone out and been at some of these, one of Trump's rallies recently. What are you hearing from people? Is this Donald Trump's Republican Party?
I mean,
still?
a Trump rally is not exactly the environment where you're going to find people who are, questioning Donald Trump and persuadable, to use the pundit parlance. But I anecdotally, I hear from people who say, well, this is in the past. Why is this being brought up now? Why are we talking about this now? This happened so long ago. Shouldn't we move on? Shouldn't we focus on gas prices, on baby formula, on any of the immediate concerns that are facing the country that Washington could do something to change?
And that's a valid point.
Yeah,
right?
but I think in part you could speak better to this than I could. The audience for this seems to be in part prosecutors, and independent voters are not the people who will be potentially acting on this in the immediate term.
I completely agree. I think, of course, they're trying to do this for history. The story needs to be told and told fully. But absolutely, they are aiming right at prosecutors. You can see it in the rhetoric. A couple months ago, when the members of the committee were asked, are you trying to build a criminal case here? They were very careful. Not our job. Now, on a daily basis, they're using terms like conspiracy and fraud and criminality. So they're clearly aiming at prosecutors. And there's an interesting, I think, sort of duality to this, which is, on the one hand, I think the committee is doing a very effective job of presenting the evidence in a way that's compelling. On the other hand, every day that passes takes some of the impetus and the momentum out of a prosecution. And one of the criticisms I've made of DOJ is, if you are going to charge this case, charge a former president with trying to steal an election. It is the most serious crime that could be committed against our democracy. Yet here we are, a year and a half out.
Right.
You have to act concomitant with the moment. Yes.
Yeah.
I think the committee is in danger of allowing it to be set up as a failure if it does not result in a successful prosecution of Donald Trump. And there are a lot of obstacles to getting that successful prosecution.
Unbeknownst to a lot of people, we have to wrap it up. Ellie, Ramesh, Olivia Nuzzi, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right, coming up. Just days after the arrest of dozens of men who police say have ties to a white nationalist group and plan to disrupt a pride parade, I sit down with the mother of one of those men. She's trying to figure out how to get him to leave the hate group. We'll share some tools we can all use to try and mend relationships in this time of deep societal divide. When CNN Tonight returns.
Sunday on CNN. In a year full of challenges, let's salute those using their platforms for good.
It's just so needed, and we have a lot more to do.
Join us as we shine a light on some familiar faces.
I have gotten a front row seat to what heroism is.
Turning words into action.
It makes us human.
If we still care, there is hope.
CNN Heroes Salutes, hosted by Aaron Burnett. Sunday.
We share this place, we all belong. We have to restore this planet's soul. Teach it something more than what we know. Give it what
what in the world is going on in Texas right now?
A ruby red state gets redder.
Money is what's pushing Texas to the far right.
Why?
Really, really wealthy people spend a lot of money to get policy made the way they want it, and they get it.
CNN investigates.
I do not think that the average voter has any idea.
Is this about being conservative, or is it about control?
Follow the money.
CNN Special Report, Deep in the Pockets of Texas. Saturday on CNN.
It's a scene that's hard to forget. 31 masked men arrested just over a week ago in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. All of them, police say, on a mission to stoke chaos at a pride event in the name of hate. So, how does a person even turn to that? I spoke to the mother of one of those folks who was arrested. She told me she's speaking out because she is desperate to find a way to help her son, who's now lost down this rabbit hole of radicalism.
I genuinely love people.
Karen Amsden wants her son back, the one she knew before the obsession with his online community, before the political arguments, before joining an alleged hate group. She says her first warning her son Jared Boyce was not himself was a quick conversation.
I went to go pick up my grandsons and he just started to, I said something about a quote by Anne Frank or something, and he just said something about, that's not even real. The Holocaust isn't real. And I thought he was joking.
He wasn't. She says when his marriage eventually failed, he returned to her home. How old is your son?
Right now he's 27.
And where is he living?
He is living in my basement.
She says her son joined the group Patriot Front sometime around 2018. Labeled a white nationalist group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, the group was formerly known as Vanguard America, but the leadership changed the group's name not long after this. The person responsible for this deadly act of hate in Charlottesville in 2017 was photographed with them, holding the group's shield, though the leadership later said he was not a member. Amsden says the group's hateful ideals do not reflect how her son was raised. Did you teach him to hate?
Absolutely not.
She says he has proof of who he used to be printed on his own body.
He got a tattoo of Buddha on his arm, and he got this tattoo of saying, don't give in to hate and anger and rage. And
wait, hold on.
It's on him. I know, it's there. Yeah.
He has a Buddha tattooed on him, and he has don't give in to anger and hate tattooed on his body?
Yes. He's been forever trying to find his place where he fits.
So it did not come as a surprise that he was among the 31 people arrested in Idaho for conspiracy to riot at a pride parade.
I was hoping after spending some time in jail that maybe this would be a wake-up call for him, like to question what is this group that I've been involved, where is this really getting me?
Instead, he doubled down. We tried reaching out to Jared Boyce. He did not return our texts.
And so that's when I said, we can't do this. You can't live at my house and be doing this kind of stuff and putting this kind of hate out into the world and putting yourself in danger. And you need to move out of my house if you can't give up the Patriot Front. And
did he give up
the
Patriot Front?
No, he didn't. He initially was like, no, I can't give him up. And I said, okay, pack your things, get out of the house. He started packing. He made a couple of calls. He couldn't find anybody that was willing to help him. So he came back to me in tears and crying and like, I have nowhere to go.
Ultimately, she says, he chose Patriot Front over family. What does it do to you as a mother, and this is your only child, to have him choose Patriot Front over you?
Yeah.
Over family?
It's oh man, it's a slap in the face because I am the one that has bailed him out all these years.
She has run out of answers to help her son.
One thing to do is to try to help yourself. Try to find a support group.
Psychiatrist Dr. Joseph Mapierre has some answers. What can a mother say who says she's tried everything?
It's a very common question these days, of course, and it's a tough answer because sometimes the answer is no. I think if we're talking about family members or loved ones or that sort of thing, I think the most important principle is just to try to stay connected.
For decades, he's been studying why people join different groups.
We're seeing is that people who fall into ideological movements are there for a reason, and if we expect them to ever come out of the proverbial rabbit hole, we have to understand what brought them in there in the first place.
Amsden says her biggest fear now is that her son's hate is spreading to his young children, her precious grandchildren.
They're both amazing kids, but we'll be driving out and we'll see a rainbow flag and go, ugh, the rainbow flag. My dad hates the rainbow flag. The rainbow flag is bad, you know, and I'm like, no, I feel like I have to, no, the rainbow flag is not bad. My dad's going to tear it down. Well, then your dad's going to get in trouble because that is against the law. He can't tear down the rainbow flag.
Is your son teaching your grandchildren to hate?
Yeah, he is.
This kind of radicalization is impacting families across the country. It's just one of the many extreme divides in a nation that may be trading compromise for all or nothing extremes. We'll discuss with tonight's guest next.
コーヒーの持つ力って人と人をつなぐ力だと思ってて、うちの会社のビジョンっていうのは日本のコーヒーといえばフィロコフィアってなることなんですよ。からそれを達成するには世界に向けた通販が必要だったんですよね。
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
We're here now at the home of one of the FSB team, and my name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
It's just been a chaotic scene here.
People are so exhausted. Just gonna help her carry this bag.
We were just in the hospital. It was shocking. Why do you think India has been hit so badly? Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
Why does a small group of women asking for their right to be educated threaten you so much?
Raise your hand if you love school.
I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you.
You can hear gunshots every couple minutes. And now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their story.
I'm Mindy Kincaid in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
It isn't every day that parents find themselves in the shoes of a mother like Karen Amsden, the woman that you just met, whose son is now tied to a white nationalist group. But every day, there are parents and children, family members and friends who are being wrenched apart by polarization and misinformation. Olivia Nuzzi and Ramesh Ponnaruru are back with me, as well as the incomparable S.E. Cupp
thank you.
is joining
nice
the
to be
conversation.
here. Thank
I
you.
mean, I want you to come back, so I'm going to be extra nice.
Okay.
It's a very positive topic. that
I'm
we've welcomed you here
curious
for.
from you guys. Like, when you see this mother, she is struggling. Are we not all struggling with family member and friends or people who are at each other's throats? I will start with you, Ramesh. What kinds of things are you hearing just in your everyday life? And because it seems to all of us, right? It seems to mirror what other people in society are going through.
Well, not a lot of white nationalists in my family.
What about your baby?
Mine either.
Not yet. Not yet.
I'm happy to say. So this is an extreme form of something that we do see other places, which is this, growing polarization of politics, and even those of us who don't have this particular problem, we do see this willingness to shut people out based on what we think they think, based on the kind of people they remind us of. And that is, I think, slowly infecting the family. The family used to be a kind of respite from that kind of political division, and our divisions are now attaining the dimensions where that's harder and harder to find.
S.E. Cupp, what do you think happened? Why are we here?
Well, a lot of reasons, and it's been particularly disorienting on the flip-flopping of political orthodoxies, things that I used to think everyone in my party believed were orthodoxy. I mean, Ramesh, you know this as well as I do, now no longer matter because one guy said they no longer mattered. And so to have friends, one-time friends, become political foes almost overnight has been incredibly disorienting and destabilizing. I will say, I mean, I grew up a conservative in liberal Massachusetts. I went to liberal schools. I moved to Manhattan. I worked in liberal newspapers.
Were you attacked?
If I,
Were you
no,
attacked
and
then?
if I didn't know how to talk to liberals, I wouldn't have had any friends. I never had this problem where my politics put people off. Now I have dozens of folks, some family, some friends, some colleagues, who won't talk to me, who think I've completely changed. By the way, my ideas have not changed one bit. The party has changed. And the demonization, the personal demonization of politics, culture, values has completely shifted underneath us. So you don't have to have a child who's a white nationalist to feel the complete disorientation of what the last few years in politics has been.
It's bubbling in a different way. The polarization is impacting us in many different ways. Olivia Nuzzi, when you see this story, obviously not all families are going to have to deal with something that's this far down the rabbit hole. But what do you see when you're out reporting and talking to people? And again, I work for CNN, and so I get it in spades when I am out in the field, which is where I normally am, from people, from everything from fake news to cuss words. I mean,
Do people not like CNN?
Apparently, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't agree.
I mean, this anecdote to me is sort of, it's like a perfect metaphor for where we're at politically in some ways, where this woman is trying her best to keep a connection with someone who's completely radicalized, has dangerous ideas that he believes, who's at risk of doing something dangerous perhaps, and she's keeping him in her basement. And it's kind of like, how far do you go? At what point are you no longer just extending an olive branch, and at what point are you tacitly condoning behavior by, giving him a place to stay, I guess probably giving him time to explore these things online, probably giving him Wi-Fi, right? But most people, I think, probably struggle with a version of this, which is, how far do you go to live out your ideals, and at what point are people with whom you disagree no longer acceptable for you to associate with, right? And I think it's a case-by-case thing, and I think in general communication is probably a good thing, and not allowing people to be on this choose your own adventure ride every day online. You can create your own universe that you live in, create your own information feedback loop. You never really have to be confronted with anybody else. But anecdotally, I mean, for whatever it's worth, I find that people seem fearful of, it's almost like the extremes are so loud and so entertaining. You know, you don't see a lot of like centrists sitting around on television talking like we are all the time, right? This is nice. Not calling anyone a centrist here, but
Thank you.
Ramesh wants
don't
to
worry,
be clear.
don't worry. But I think that leads to people being fearful of being harshly judged by people that they know that they disagree with.
They've created this fake version of community.
Yeah.
And patriotism.
He wants this connection.
Yeah.
He wants this belonging. You can see that.
And
you
yet
can
no
see
one
that
will give him
really
a place to
poignantly.
stay.
Well, right,
Right.
because they're not the kind of friends who will do that. Maybe they're not nearby. They're on the internet. They're not real.
No one to open their house when he was
And
had nowhere to go.
And we've seen, as people are losing this sense of connection, we've seen this increase in radicalization. We've seen an increase in mental illness, which I think is not unrelated to the kind of fevered political atmosphere we often seem to have. So all of these things are going on, and they're
To that point, just to take
reinforcing each
issue, I
other.
feel like there's a decrease in stigma, and so there's probably an increase in people
In
being
reporting it,
diagnosed,
yeah.
right? And so it's hard to know exactly how on the similar trajectory these things are in tandem with each other, right?
It is hard to tell. It is hard to tell. But the internet is a place where you can be whoever you want. And so
Yeah.
some people are going down the rabbit hole. It's a difficult thing and difficult place where we are. Thank you so much. We're going to look at the new Republican Party platform in Texas. It draws hard lines, denies some important recent history, and goes further than former President Trump ever has when it comes to one of the groups of Americans. Coming up next.
I'm Hadas Gold in Jerusalem, and this is CNN.
Heard it all before? But have you heard it like this?
The ultimate disruptor looks set to shake up our world. We really can't ignore the impact that this has. What can we do that explores a fresh angle? So let's untangle the players and political forces. The truth is a lot more complex. What's really going on?
Fast-paced news, in-depth reports, and fact checks from the perspective of The Global Brief with Bianca Nobilo. Tonight on CNN.
Out front tonight, a potential breakthrough in treating coronavirus.
We've gotten very little help from the federal government.
Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? One of our viewers saw you last night on the show. She says she's going to pay your rent this month. Shut up. I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse, knowing that that could put you at risk for this?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Aaron Burnett out front on CNN.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Over on that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessments. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces.
I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on.
No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered.
There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
Welcome back. The Republican Party in Texas had made some very divisive decisions as of late. It is now openly and forcibly opposing homosexuality. Its idea of a big tent party doesn't include the LGBTQ community. This is happening while the Texas GOP boldly embraces the lie that the 2020 election was rigged or stolen. The state convention adopted a resolution saying, quote, "We reject the certified results of the 2020 presidential election, and we hold that acting President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. was not legitimately elected by the people of the United States." The party is clear about its opposition specifically to being gay or transgender, calling homosexuality an, quote, "abnormal lifestyle choice," standing against, quote, "all efforts to validate transgender identity." It rebukes moves by the party's own members to find bipartisan compromise on gun legislation by adopting a resolution rejecting the gun agreement negotiated by Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn. Let's discuss what this says about the path of the party with Olivia Ramesh and S.E. Cupp. All right, what does this tell you? I will start with you, S.E. Cupp. What does this tell you about where the Republican Party is headed? Does Texas give you an idea that this could spread?
Yes and no. This is particularly extreme, even for like Texas Republicans. To me, this feels like it's the farthest edge of the far right in Texas. I know that because polling shows a lot of this stuff is actually unpopular in Texas.
Republican voters don't like
Well,
it.
yeah, I mean, you know, the abortion ban that no one asked for, that effectively criminalizes abortion in Texas, is unpopular in Texas. So I think this says a lot about where the Republican Party is telegraphing it might want to go there. But I don't think it completely represents where most voters are. And to our last segment, that is the case on Name Your Issue. I think most people in America are squarely in the middle of all kinds of issues. Take abortion, for example. Most people are not on the far right crying for abortion bans. Most people are not on the far left saying no restrictions. The vast majority are in the middle. And yet, it is so weird that a majority of people feel orphaned by the political parties and unseen and unheard because they don't fit into convenient, politically exploitable boxes. The far right is exploiting people on the right, and the far left is exploiting people on the left. I don't think it's symmetrical, but it has left the majority of people not represented by this platform, this crazy platform, regressive nonsense in Texas, does not represent a majority of people, probably not even in Texas.
It didn't represent Donald Trump. I want to play something here for you. Here is what Donald Trump said about the LGBTQ community in 2016.
As your president, I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology. Believe me. And I have to say, as a Republican, it is so nice to hear you cheering for what I just said. Thank you.
Okay, so that tells you something, although that was just a snippet of time in 2016. Ramesh, I have to ask you, and I also will ask you, Olivia, is Trump leading this party, or is he looking for people to follow, watching where things are going, checking the tea leaves, and deciding, okay, I'm going to jump on that because it's popular?
Well, I think President Trump, former President Trump, still using the honorific there, has always had a pretty cunning sense of what matters to Republican voters, where you could depart from previous party orthodoxy and where you had to stick with it. I don't think anybody thinks that he adopted the cause of opposition to abortion, for example, because it was deeply heartfelt, but he knew that you could cross the previous Republican orthodoxy on things like entitlements, because there weren't millions and millions of Republican voters who were diehard in favor of that old Republican position.
Or protectionism.
You couldn't, that's another example, NATO, but you could not switch on issues like guns, the right to life, and so he adopted the standard conservative Republican positions on these issues. Now here I think you got something a little different, because as he was saying, this is not a group of people that is representative even of Texas Republicans, right? I mean, one might even say they're abnormal.
But to be fair, I mean, some of these politicians keep getting reelected, right? So it's...
Well, right, but John Cornyn, for example, he does very well in Republican primaries, and he was booed there. Ken Paxton had a much worse showing in the latest Republican primary, and he got a standing ovation. This is a group of people who have always been out of step. Back when George W. Bush was governor of Texas, the state party was dominated by a lot of people who disliked him.
I think that we make a mistake sometimes as pundits, or when we're engaging in punditry, where we think, well, this isn't popular, this isn't politically popular. The party or this politician in general would do a lot better if they assumed the point of view that the majority of people in this area or in the country hold. And we forget that some people are purely ideological, and they are acting in service of a bigger ideology. And when you look at the court, right, when we look at what's happening with Roe, we're talking decades in the making, people deliberately installing people throughout the levels of the justice system to ensure an outcome like this. And some people are acting purely to execute on ideological beliefs that maybe people who are voting for them, and most people, not most people, but many people, when they're voting, when they're going into a voting booth, are not making a calculated political decision. If I vote for this person here, this person might execute my view on this person,
right. They're not making it.
They're making a difference between taking an unpopular stand and being spiteful.
That's true. I'm going to have to wrap this up. Olivia Nuzzi, Ramesh Ponnaruru, and Essie Cupp, thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Coming up, going inside America's gun culture.
In my vehicle, I have an AR-15. I carry a firearm on me virtually everywhere I go.
Why some gun rights advocates are pushing for more freedom than ever before, especially now. Why? That's coming up next.
Gangwon 2024, come on. Gangwon 2024.
Gangwon 2024.
The Royal Oak by Audemars Piguet is the world's first stainless steel luxury sports watch.
Famous watch designer Gerald Genta drew inspiration from a deep sea diver's helmet, which had an octagonal shape as well as riveted screws around the design.
It sold for around $3,000 when it was first released in 1972. And you know, this was considered both by the industry and by the general watch buying public as just a piece of inexplicable insanity. You know, you just didn't charge that for a stainless steel watch. And not only did they not go out of business, it has gone on to become the single most important watch commercially and aesthetically for Audemars Piguet. They're avidly collected. And yeah, they are icons of modern watch design. It's gone on to become one of the most successful wristwatches of all time.
It's 9 o'clock in the morning at the University of Dayton.
How is everyone? What we're going to do this morning,
Tony Talbot is teaching a class about slavery.
there's over 40 million human trafficking victims in the world today.
But his students aren't just learning the facts about human trafficking. They're being trained to teach others about it, students who are even younger than they are.
We get the students to become near peer educators, going into classrooms, giving human trafficking awareness presentations. If we tell children about this now, they can become part of the solution.
Hi guys, my name is Ami. I'm a second-year student at the University of Dayton.
Today, Talbot students are taking over Nick Pent's 9th grade American history class at the Dayton Regional STEM School.
It's definitely important to know what is trafficking, because maybe you're in that situation and you don't even know that you're being trafficked.
A lot more online trafficking is happening, and I didn't really realize that before, but now that we do, you can obviously use more precautions when you're online.
I'm hoping that my students, now that they're knowledgeable, hopefully they get a little bit passionate about it, become leaders. I'm telling you, you just gotta step aside and let the next generation do its thing.
Thank you.
On Mission Ahead, a new spin on launching spacecraft into orbit.
As a species, I think we just always look up and we say, well, that's the next frontier.
Then, could this new zero-emission boat be the Tesla of the sea? Plus, preparing for the future, are cities that float the answer?
On water, buildings don't have to be static.
Meet the entrepreneurs and inventors who are taking mobility to the next level.
Mission Ahead, Saturday on CNN, in association with Fujifilm.
Yet another holiday weekend turning deadly. From New York to Los Angeles, dozens of people became victims of gun violence once again. A 21-year-old basketball star was killed at a Harlem park. A 15-year-old boy was killed at a DC music festival. 47 people were wounded in Chicago. A man was killed at a Las Vegas mall. All this as the Senate has yet to reach a deal on a gun bill. And pro-gun groups are doubling down against any kind of reform. Here's Ellie Reeve.
This right here, I'll even let you hold it. You want to hold that? That's a knife right there. Okay, push your thumb up and push that button up right there. Just push it up. Come on, toughen up. Come on. Come on.
Well, I'm left-handed.
Are you? There you go.
Whoa, okay.
All right, and then you pull it down and it retracts. Those were illegal till 2016, and I made sure that they were legal to carry and then carry them in the state capitol.
Why?
Because that's for an act of self-defense. In my vehicle, I have an AR-15. I carry a firearm on me virtually everywhere I go. That is a 9mm compact Smith & Wesson.
And then you got a body cam.
I got a body cam.
Don Spencer took over the Oklahoma Second Amendment Association in 2016. The group claims it's helped pass almost 40 different pieces of pro-gun legislation.
We are not merely a Second Amendment group, a gun group. We are a liberty group that realizes it may take guns to maintain that liberty. And
Many Americans saw the second elementary school massacre in a decade and thought there should be more restrictions on guns. We wanted to know why these guys saw the same thing and thought there should be more guns, more openly, and everywhere.
Can you explain, like, what are you afraid of? Because to an outsider, it's like you have all Republican state government. Like, why?
Well, afraid's the wrong word. Okay. Concern. It's not so much about guns, it's about our God-given rights. A good guy or gal with a gun is the only answer to a bad guy with a gun.
I've heard that said a lot, but I don't know that it's true.
Can you give me a logical reason that it wouldn't be true?
It didn't work in Uvalde.
It was a gun-free zone. It was in a school.
There are police outside.
Yeah, there were 19 police officers who had orders from their bosses to stand down.
We wanted to talk more with Thompson, so we went to his hometown the next day.
I think I'm the only person in OK2A with a Prius. I get kidded about it all the time. Every time there's a shooting, the left immediately starts beating the drum. More gun control, more gun control, more gun control.
Is it possible it's because they don't want there to be as many shootings.
Yes, I'll admit that that is exactly their motivation. Our basic disagreement is how to stop the shootings. There is no way that they can get all the guns. There's more guns than people in America. So it's a problem that's going to be there forever, no matter what kind of gun control you put on. Unless, do you want a police state? Do you want people do you want authorities?
But I feel like you're proposing a private police state.
Not private police.
If everyone everywhere is carrying guns all the time, you don't feel that's a type of police state?
They're not out there policing, they're out there prepared for self-defense or to defend others.
In Joe Biden's world, I would not be able to defend myself.
Is he proposing an elimination of all guns?
Yes.
Is he?
Yes.
I didn't catch that announcement.
That's the ultimate goal here. You know it's the goal. I know it's the goal. Let's quit
I don't
kidding
know
around.
that.
Yes, you do.
Terry Thompson right here on the front row. Yeah, he's a rock star.
So what would you do to stop mass shootings?
We got to quit blaming what's used for the weapon in these types of things and go to deal with the person. People are confused how many genders there are. They're confused on what bathroom they're supposed to use. They're confused on whether a life is of value even if it's not been born.
I mean, are you confused on what restroom to use?
No, but we had to pass laws in Oklahoma to make sure boys will use boys' restrooms, girls will use girls.
And what does that have to do with an AR-15?
Because if you don't respect life, you're not going to respect anything.
Okay, so you see mass shootings as, you know, a cultural trickle-down effect from abortion and transgender rights?
Yes, actually it's the breakdown of the family.
In several states, red flag laws allow courts to temporarily confiscate the guns of someone believed to be a danger to themselves or others. Oklahoma passed an anti-red flag law in 2020.
How do you propose, if not this red flag law, keeping guns out of the hands of the mentally ill?
By the mentally ill being segregated from society if they're a threat to themselves or society. We may have to go back to institutionalization, which was left back in the 80s.
But like, would it be before they committed a violent crime, or?
Well, I don't know how you would ever stop someone that's given no signal that just goes to decide to commit a violent crime. I don't know how you do that.
You might be wondering, do these guys ever fear that their loved ones could be victims of a mass shooting? The answer is yes. They think about it all the time.
By the way, my children were home educated. We had drills at our own home for someone trying to break into our house.
What were those like?
Well, I saw someone show up on our porch at about 11 or 12 o'clock one night, unannounced.
Okay. And so did your kids in that moment prepare your firearms?
Yes, because when I looked through the door, I said, gun up. My wife goes to one room, she grabs the gun, the kids go back. My daughter she was, I don't know, 9, 10, 11. She had a .32 caliber in her bedroom, and we had them gunned up and prepared. We trained them that if they hear my voice, obviously it's time to lay the weapon down before I went to that part of the house. If they didn't hear my voice, someone was going to get shot. Or my wife's voice, or their sibling's voice.
Okay, so part of the drill is you walk through the house and what you're saying, like, I'm walking towards your bedroom.
Yeah, I'm waiting for their acknowledgement because I don't get shot.
Wow. See, that to me seems like a scary way to live.
Well, scarier way to live is what would it be like had the person penetrated inside the house and harmed me? What would that be? What would that psychology be for my children?
We went to a gun range to get the views of people who shoot but are not active.